Is ICT a service provider or is it an economic enabler? Because depending on how we want to view it, then our policy directive will also have to shift in that direction. So the long and short of it is yes, the Communication Act is quite comprehensive, it's very responsive to enabling the digital space, but there's other elements within the policy space that need to be addressed.
Maybe if you can just share with the audience what is being done in those other areas that needs attention.
So we currently have the Electronic Transactions Act. It has been finalized, but it has not been operationalized because there is certain implementation modalities that need to be finalized. The cybercrime and data protection areas are still bills where the ministry is still busy with consultation, and those have not yet been finalized. The other area that would also be outstanding is the operationalization of the Universal Service Fund. In some jurisdictions, they call it the Digital Sovereignty Fund. The fund is aimed at ensuring that those that do not have services receive services. Because you understand that the operators are business entities. A lot of work has been done and we must commend the operators, but we still have a lot of areas that are not covered, and I think we saw it in the first presentation. And the question is, how are we going to cover those areas? We are, for instance, sitting with 1,800 schools across the country. 1,500 of those schools do not have connectivity. And the Universal Service Fund was designed to collect the levies so that those levies can then be utilized to connect the schools to pay for connectivity. And for as long as that gap is not filled, then we cannot talk about digital transformation. And this is also why you see on the network readiness index that was shared, our impact index is leaping because of those gaps in ensuring that the excellent infrastructure that we have is actually being utilized by those that need to utilize it, and it's also being utilized in a way that we create impact. The policy mind shift that we are pushing for as a regulator is to say the same way in which there is a lot of investment made into the road networks, for instance, can the similar attention be given to the Universal Service Fund? And I'm glad that the Minister of Finance is here, so that we can connect the schools, so that we can connect the hospitals. So from a regulatory perspective, the issue is not so much the framework, it's not so much the network, it is the ability of us making investments into the fund that is designed to ensure that those that must get connectivity receive that connectivity.
All right, we'll be exploring that a little bit later on. Thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Erastus, congratulations on a successful IPO process. It's by coincidence that the regulator and the operator are sitting next to each other. But how do you see MTC's role?
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Up until 3 years ago, MTC was known as purely a mobile operator. And then we took an intentional decision to position ourselves as a digital enabler of choice. We started going with the slogan, "Man matters in man." And the thinking behind that was to say, how do we allow you, how do we digitally enable you so that you are able to execute your mandate? Because we have realized that for many businesses, for many entities, 60 to 70% of their budget will go to technology acquisition. So the last speaker spoke about 3 pillars, which is technology, and I think innovation, as well as talent. Now, when we then make the decision to become a digital enabler of choice, we started shifting our philosophy. We created what we call smart or strategic partnership. Because something that we picked up was that as a country, we don't have a centrally coordinated planning platform. Everybody plans in silos. And then we realized that if we start pushing for such, it will enable us to optimize as a country resources and then have more impactful implementations. The make sure that all Namibians are connected. We are planning to, currently we are standing at 97% of population coverage, and the aim is at least by 2023 to have 100% population coverage. Now, within those statistics, we are talking of 3G, 2G, 3G, and 4G. And as it stands, between last year and this year, our 2G has increased from 96% to 97% population coverage. The 3G has increased from 86% to 87%. And the 4G is increasing from 43% to 45%. Now, also as part of the strategic of smart partnership, you have probably seen in the media the past few months that we are signing MOUs. The most recent being the MOU with the University of Science and Technology. And that was basically to promote what we call thought leadership. So that when we engage our partners, we then say, how do we enable you to actually do your mandate? If in skills, give us a problem statement, give us a thought leadership. And through the HTTPS, we are also funding for PhD and master graduates who then has the capacity to solve problems for different entities to which we see ourselves as the digital enabler. And then we also went further, because we are fortunate to have a future thinking team. So we went further and we implemented what we call an MTC cloud or cloud one. And the aim and purpose was basically to position ourselves to assist the Namibian government in implementing the e-governance, and also for us to then strategically align ourselves and assist in deploying the e-services.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erastus. I must say Dr. Shanapida is also in the room, and perhaps he'll be also sharing his experiences as well, so that we don't seem to be favoring one telco over the other. But Mr. Johannes, let's draw you in. You are Deputy Director of IT Infrastructure. So just harking from the conversation earlier with the regulator, Ms. Nghikembua seems to indicate that, yes, we have made solid sort of growth in terms of laying out the infrastructure in the country, but there are gaps. Maybe if you can talk to that.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me very well. As per the mandate of the ministry, we are mandated to lay the foundation for accelerated use and development of ICT in the country, as well as coordinating information management within the government. Speaking to that mandate, what we do, we simply promote the development of ICT infrastructure, laying foundation for leveling the playing field for the operators in the sector by developing or proposing for the development of the legislation, regulations, and all other frameworks related to allow for that. Now, as a ministry, we saw, for example, the need to embrace digital transformation as well as cybersecurity way back. And if you remember our theme, the theme for the last ICT summit was on digital transformation, which was well popularized by our ICT summit ambassador, Dr. Sanabinda. And we had discussions and a lot of platforms, panel discussions in line with digital transformation, and that gave birth to recommendations that brought about the development of a national digital strategy. We sourced partners, development partners that sponsored the development of that national strategy. At one point, copyright ownership actually halted our whole process, and then we had to go on the drawing board again to find new partners. But for now, as indicated, the fourth industry actually managed to secure us another partner, and then we are going forward with that development. In addition to that, we also, as indicated by Prof. Emilia that as much as we speak of the digital transformation, we also need to have a consensus on security of these platforms. Hence, we, as a ministry, we embarked on the development of the National Cybersecurity Strategy. This is a multi-stakeholders committee that's formed by government ministries, offices, and agencies, as well as the private sectors are members of that committee. This strategy is equally in its advanced state. Currently, had a national consultative meeting for input from the sector, and is now awaiting for the final patches as recommended by the sector before we can submit to cabinet for endorsement or approval. So, in terms of digital transformation, I think the ministry, I think, also recognizes that it's common knowledge that the sector is evolving very fast, and we really recognize that. So we also see the need that it's very important that our regulatory landscape also takes the fast pace that technology is evolving. And I think thank you.
Thank you so much for that intervention. Maybe if we can conclude on the question of digital infrastructure, because I get the sense that we have introduced that, and perhaps we just need to conclude on it before we move on to the other sort of aspects related to innovation and talent that Dr. Naomab also started with. Professor Bwalya, maybe if we can bring you in here, what are the sort of best practices around infrastructure that you have seen on the continent? I mean, when you look at Rwanda, they have made a lot of headway, but they are a very small country. Ours is quite vast, and therefore the cost of putting up that infrastructure is quite massive. So what are the sort of best practices and solutions and innovations that we have seen in this particular space?
Thank you very much for that question. I just want to share the perspective of what is happening around the SADC. It's a highly contested space because the different players in the telecommunication sector want to maintain their competitive advantage, and so they want to protect their information infrastructure. In the case of Namibia, I heard today in the morning break during the break that the infrastructure, the basic infrastructure, is actually supported by the government. And so what is lacking, I think, is a proper policy framework to engage the different players so that they can open up the space. In South Africa, for example, it's the same old story. The different providers, they don't want to share. If they share, then they have to get a business benefit. In the case of Zambia, it's opening up slowly, but I think it's a journey because we've been talking about the sharing of infrastructure for quite a long time, and also opening the digital space so that more players can come in. That's where we're going. So I think engagement with the players is something that needs to be done in the case of Namibia, so that we level the playing ground, so that anybody can innovate in that space can jump in.
We are getting a question from Slido. Somebody's asking what impact will be of sharing ICT infrastructure have on the entities which already invested in those costs. Will they now become sunk costs? Dr. Erastus, maybe if you can round up this particular issue because you have a particular view on it.
Yeah. I generally see the topic of infrastructure sharing as very broad, and I would want to put this into context. Earlier I mentioned that as a country we lack integrated planning, and I like what Prof. Bwalya just recently said. My perspective of integrated planning and stakeholders is not only telcos. This is a planning platform where new roads are being planned, new power lines are being planned. I think that's a platform that we need to create as a country, because then it gives the different service providers an opportunity to already be part of the planning, and through that we optimize impactful. Now, if I have to drill it down to the perspective of MTC, earlier I mentioned in terms of the population coverage that MTC has. And on top of that, I also mentioned that on top of the connectivity that we did, we are providing what we call on-demand cloud services. These were all technologies that initially were intended for the use of MTC. But when we realized that it would actually be more impactful to bring stakeholders on board, that's how we started the discussions around strategic partnership to say, we have this connectivity platform, we have this infrastructure in place, come on board, it will assist to reduce the OPEX cost. So that's the position MTC has taken. And we are also leveraging in terms of the capabilities that we have, not only in terms of infrastructure, but also the capabilities that we have in software development, where we go to potential partners and say, and we have, in fact, we offer this for free. We go to them and say, allow us to develop an app for you for free, so that you become a one-stop shop. So those are the type of discussions that we have started the past two years, and it is really bearing fruit, if I should say.
Regulator, we know your thoughts on this particular issue, but do you think that there is a need for some sort of coordination with the various players so that there is a focal point for all of these operators to come and share and come and have this sort of dialogue without putting their caps on? Because you get the sense that everybody is around that table representing their own interests. Or is the regulator, you think, a champion for that sort of collaboration that needs to take place?
So thank you very much. I think the issue of infrastructure sharing needs to be understood as a policy directive. It's a governmental policy directive. And it's such a critical policy directive that it has also been codified as an activity in HPP2. Now, the very rudimentary concept of infrastructure sharing is to say, if you have operator A, and operator A has a tower in village X, then you have operator B who wants to set up a tower in village Y, which does not have a service. Operator A and B must share capacity in this village so that there is no duplication and the investment must then be taken to the other village which does not have connectivity. That is the essence of infrastructure sharing. And infrastructure sharing is designed to benefit consumers, not licensees. It is designed to benefit consumers. So what we as regulators are saying in enforcing that policy directive is that where there is spare capacity, operators must share, so that there is no duplication in investment. And the level of coordination needs to be done, and this is what the regulator is championing. We need to coordinate it so that consumers receive the service. Because if it's not coordinated, then you'll find two towers next to each other in one village, while the other village is sitting without connectivity. So that is really the essence of it, and that is the level at which we would like to see the exercise coordinated.
Dr. Erastus, I will get back to you. Professor Bwalya, I will get back to you. Dr. Lanvin is still on the line, engaging with us on this very issue. Perhaps, Dr. Lanvin, you talked about the sort of investments that have taken place on infrastructure in the country, but the impact that you are seeing is quite low. Maybe if you can expand that thought and talk to us generally what the sort of low income and maybe middle income countries have done to address this particular issue.
Thank you very much. Let me first say that everything I have heard in this panel is very encouraging. I think the level at which these issues are taken, including infrastructure sharing, which is an extremely complex and delicate issue. And again, this has been underlined by previous speakers as well. Namibia is not receiving the rewards it should accept from the efforts it's making in developing its infrastructure and typically its network readiness. And there are different obstacles that need to be addressed to restore what needs to be restored in the area of impact. One of them has been underlined is education. And we're not just talking about technical education, but basic education. So whether more schools should be able to operate online, whether it's a question more basically of more teachers at all levels, this needs to be addressed as part of the digital transformation of the country. Education is about appetite. You don't learn something you're not interested in. So there's also a mission from public authorities to grow that appetite, to make sure that the younger generation are happy to learn about technology, about innovation, about digital transformation. And the teachers have to make it fun, they have to make it attractive. But it also regards adults. The notion of upskilling and reskilling is critically important when technology changes so fast. And many countries, including among the more industrialized countries, have made the mistake of putting that as a precondition to say, if you want to be involved in digital transformation, you have to be reskilled. And that's the wrong way. The right way is to give appetite, to make people excited and enthusiastic, and to say, we are going through digital transformation. This opens so many new doors, so many new opportunities. You have a chance to be part of that movement, and we'll help you get the skills that you want to acquire in that moment. So, what Emilia Nghikembua, who I pronounced the name right, underlined in that context is extremely important. The change in the mindset, the mindset, not just about regulators, operators, politicians, but also among the population as a whole. Just to take a quick example of what this means from low-income and middle-income countries. I mentioned the case of Chile earlier. That was one of the countries in which I was involved when I was leading government practice at the World Bank. Chile has many similarities with Namibia, including geographical constraints. It's a wide area with a relatively small population. There are highly desertic areas in the north and south of the country. And in the years 2000, Chile was faced with that idea of where who should build infrastructure. And by the way, it's important to note that Chile was the first country in the world, before even any other industrial country, to reach 100% digitization rate. So they have a few things to show to other countries. And what they did was to encourage public-private partnership and attract private investors in developing the infrastructure in those villages, those areas that have no infrastructure. And to do that, they used initially their own universal service fund. But when that reached the limit, they went to what they called reverse bidding. Reverse bidding was very simple. They said, you're going to bid, address any company, foreign companies, on how much of public subsidies you need to develop the infrastructure in the deserving area. And people put their bid in sealed envelopes, and the big surprise for the government when they opened the envelopes is that a significant part of the figures in these envelopes were negative. What does it mean? It means that some private operators were ready to move into these areas, and they were not looking for subsidies from the government. They were ready to invest their own money because they had identified the commercial potential of going there. And I think when you create that kind of appetite, you have indeed something that can be combined with vision on the public parts of the economy, about inclusion areas, with what are the commercial interests of private economy. So I think that this is just one example, but there will be many others around the world about competition in the global sector in particular, and how you generate that and how you manage that. But what I I've heard so far is very encouraging.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Lanvin, for that intervention. We'll get back to you in a few. Let me take maybe more interactions from our panel. Ms. Nghikembua, PPPs are a potential solution that is in that space of infrastructure development, but also I think Ms. Nghikembua already touched on the issue of the universal fund.
Those who want to invest into this whole digital transformation journey together with the public sector. Because as we have indicated, the Minister of Finance discretion is had in terms of where the funding will be coming from, all these beautiful things we are talking about. And therefore, that element of PPP was brought into place. So it's important that we bring together and actively participate in the PPPs. This digital transformation is not something that we can just take lightly. We have abruptly been disturbed last year by COVID-19. Businesses that went on the traditional method and the old way of doing things had to close down. They had to physically fight for them to be able to do business. So if we are not gearing ourselves towards digital transformation, where there is no physical infrastructure, we pair up so that we don't duplicate the efforts. Where we have physical infrastructure, but we can pair up in different ways. If we don't do that, coming together as public and private, then we will not meet this digital transformation journey. So sharing data, sharing information, sharing infrastructure, and getting on board this PPP into PPP arrangements will definitely help us as a country. From a bank perspective, for example, we have started this digital journey. And in terms of transformation and digital transformation, it's not something that Dr. Lanvin has said that you can take on a silo approach. So this is a journey that you have to take everybody on board. As a company, starting from the head of the institution, as the chairperson and governor of the bank, that is where we started. Soon the bank will launch their digital transformation strategy. And in terms of our main strategy as a bank for the next 3 years. And there you will see what this digital transformation journey is. We want to bring together those we are regulating and us as a regulator to see how best we can take that approach. We have spoken about the fintech regulatory framework that is there in place. One of it is the sandbox approach that we have in that framework, and that is where we want to bring the innovators and the regulators together. So let's focus on getting this digital transformation journey, get into PPPs where it's not impossible for government to take this journey alone. We need to come together as private and public sector.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nghikembua. There is a question here on the slide. What is your experience and view on PPP model for government e-services? Is government able to attract skills and finances to develop best ICT infrastructure?
First of all, before I respond to that, I want to put in one points on the current discussion about infrastructure. And one of the thinking at the top of my mind is that we need to open up the infrastructure development and implementation. But we also need to be aware that there are political players who have invested their billions or $1 million to set up that infrastructure. How will we ensure that we are fair to those players so that we don't disadvantage them, so that they still remain that competitive, they still remain competitive? And also on the other hand, how do we level the ground, create an enabling environment where new players can come? If I want to set up a telecommunications company, I want to be given an enabling environment where I'm able to put in my money and set it up. But I don't want to set up at the disadvantage of the players that are already involved. How do we protect? What kind of business models are we going to suggest as an regulatory authority? What kind of principles are we going to put in place so that it makes sense for the actual environment? The regulatory authority has yes, power, they can go out. But I I'll tell you that those pronouncements just come out and they end there. It won't, the really want a positive impact on the environment. I'm thinking of a government order about the competition. How does the competition already carry? You level the ground, not disadvantage the established companies and not disadvantage the new master companies. So I think it's food for thought that you really need to engage with on the serious basis. As we go forward. The BP model for developing e-government services, yes, we've talked about this BP model for the past 10 years, and now we're also talking about the crowdfunding model. I'll tell you straight that even development partners in the private sector, they will not put in their money if there's no interest at the end. It's simple as that. There is no charity. Americans say there's no free lunch. They need to benefit. Only the people who have an interest is stake in whatever is being invested, being developed, they will put in the resources. So, in many African countries for the past 20 years, we're talking about this PP model. But I don't think that African governments and different players are not being aggressive enough in order to make it work. We need that aggressiveness and more engagement so that everybody understands that the benefits that are going to get. Must wants to train skills for the future. But what benefit does it have? They have to understand why they're training. You train people, and if you're not trained in the environment, then just should do something. So these are the questions that we need to address later.
Alright. Last iterations on digital infrastructure, I think we've been able at this point to Erastus, Ms. Nghikembua, I'll give you the last opportunity as a footnote of this articulation before we move to talent and innovation. Over to you.
Thanks. I would say that MPC has played the objective of the universal access fund. Because the objective is basically to make sure that investment is done in areas like rural areas. Now, with the whole everyone, and with the aim to have 100% population coverage by 2023, I should think that the statistic we have asked for. The statistics that I spoke about earlier, where I said that currently we have 84% broadband access, 84% broadband access to schools. We need currently as we speak, 84% of the schools that is not using e-learning. And we have 87% to have facilities, those are clinics. We then also developed what we call e-learning packets, which is zero rating. So we are saying to the government that once the schools are connected, the content that they have to access, that will be zero rating. The same applies to the health facilities. We have created the capability to develop apps, for example, for Ministry of Health. Now, when we started with the OE drug everyone, taking into cognizance the drive by the regulator not to duplicate infrastructure for every phase of the OE drug everyone, we have been extending invitations to other operators to say, we are now at this phase, these are the sites that we are intending to build, this is the cost attached to those sites. Kindly indicate where you have interest, and let's discuss co-investment. So I think as MTC, we really do justice to the drive by the regulator. Ms. Nghikembua.
Yes, thank you. I think the issue with infrastructure sharing, as I said earlier, is the policy directive. It is not something that needs to be done for free. It's also a legal obligation that is imposed on dominant operators because the theory is that they would have gained an economic advantage and they then need to share with the new entrants in the market so that the consumer can benefit from that economic advantage. Infrastructure sharing is also designed to bring down prices because the moment you have more operators in the market, then naturally the effect of that would be that there is choice for the consumer, and whenever there is choice, then the combination is that the prices would come down. I understand the earlier intervention that there must be due regard regard for the dominant operators. And this is why the framework goes to the extent of saying, before the dominant operator is directed to share, there must be an assessment that the dominant operator has spare capacity. And if you find that there is spare capacity, then there must also be an indication, should this spare capacity be limited or preserved for the dominant operator's own plans to roll out. So all those considerations are taken into account. It is never done in a way that places an dominant operator.
Yes. Yes. Just if you can then move on to those points that were being addressed by Dr. Lanvin. He seems to point out that Chile has done quite interesting things in that space of infrastructure development. If you can talk to that, and then we'll go to the questions of time. Thanks.
Yes. So with infrastructure development, I think our bottom line is
That space.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I want to reflect a little bit on the overwhelming evidence that Licky R has extracted in the interest of resources, human capital, social capital, and infrastructure as it is highlighted. But the question is then, where do we fall short of this in terms of the impact? One of the things from the perspective of higher education, from the perspective of the education value chain, one of the key things is research and development. And I'll come to the issue of skills in a minute. The issue of research and development is one of the key metrics there is the gross expenditure, the gross national expenditure on research and development, which is one of the key elements that are required to drive higher education. Now, if you look at where India stands from perspective, is from a global perspective, and from a sub-regional perspective, we seem to fall behind. And the question is, why do we fall behind? And the most obvious aspect of this is the private sector involvement in terms of investment in R&D. We cannot merely rely on the support of the government. Most advanced technologies are predicated on the R&D investment that comes from the private sector. And if you look at the reasons why there has been a foreshortening in this regard, is two things. Number one, we don't seem to sufficiently incentivize those industries which operate in our country, whether it is mining, whether it is in the fintech, whether it is in the financial sector. We don't seem to sufficiently incentivize those who has their R&D sector sitting outside of the country and not within the country. But we also don't seem to sufficiently incentivize those who has their R&D centers in our country, for example, through our tax breaks and support. And the consequence thereof is if you look at the operational expenditure as it pertains to R&D, many of those who would like to play in the education field is attracted to foreign countries. For example, South Africa has a tax break for R&D expenditure. So if you look at those challenges, you begin to understand the bottlenecks in terms of supporting the higher education sector. Now coming to the aspect of talent, talent is predicated on particularly how we develop skills and how we build competencies. Now with respect to the higher education sector, we have to understand that the pace at which we are moving from predominantly the third industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution is very fast, as the argument of COVID-19 is proving. So what does that mean? That means that already we have a backlog of skills mismatch. Skills is not particularly matched to what is happening in the market space. But now we are accelerating towards the fourth industrial revolution, that means we are increasing the skills mismatch. One of the things that needs to be done, and should be done urgently, is to support the higher education sector to look at their curriculum so that they can transform and redevelop their curriculum in line with the market demands. But also look at what we need to do with the backlog of skills mismatch that we have. And that's where
where the aspect of migrating the skills towards the market demand comes before. And that's not an aspect that can be dealt with alone by the higher education sector. It must come from the industry because the skills and talent must be developed in what we call in-situ development. That means in-situ development means skills must be harnessed, talent must be harnessed within the industries, particularly when there is a network. So you see that there is a difference in terms of the rate at which the higher education sector is involved in that process, particularly with digital transformation. The industry seems to lag behind, whereas the higher education sector seems to be moving at a much faster rate. So we need to find a way to balance that aspect so that you are able to get the skills as quickly as possible into the right industries. All right. Dr. Naomab, I just needed to stop you there for a second. Dr. Lanvin is leading our session because he has other important engagements. Maybe, Dr. Lanvin, your final thoughts on all of this matters as you bring it home. You have said from Emilia, but what would be the game changer for you? Over to you.
Thank you very much. Apologies, sorry to leave earlier, because this is a very exciting and high quality discussion. Since we are discussing talent and innovation, I would say that this is the next challenge. On the talent side in particular, it has been underlined several times that it is not just about creating the talent for AI or edge computing or big data. It is also addressing the basic needs in terms of fundamental primary education. If you look at the examples of countries that have done it well in terms of network readiness or future readiness, I would tend to think a country like Korea. We should not forget that in the early 1960s and even mid-60s, the GDP per capita of Korea was practically the same as that of Ghana. There's a big difference now between the two, with Korea actually being a member of the OECD and being recognized as talent-driven, innovation-driven economy. And what made the difference was the strategy taken by Korea as early as the 1960s to combine education and technology. I think that's a major part of the agenda of many emerging economies right now. But if we do that, again, it's not just the high level talent, it's basic education. I remember a meeting similar to the one we're having today a couple of years ago in Bahrain. And one of the panelists sitting next to me was the Minister of Information Communication and Education for India. I combined the two ministers, Mr. Kapil. And at some point, the moderator said, Mr. Kapil, you're telling us that you need more teachers in primary schools in India. How many teachers do you need? And Mr. Kapil said, oh, please remind me, what is the population of Bahrain? So the moderator said, it's 1.2 million. And Kapil said, oh, this is how many teachers we need, 1.2 million. So the point there is always a magnitude. You do not create these teachers overnight. It is part of digital transformation, which is an opportunity. When we put together and we finish on that, the talent index, we look at three components. How the country grows talent, how a country attracts talent, and how a country retains talent. These are the three critical elements. Growth is about education, including on-the-job lifelong learning. Attract is how you can make sure that the competencies you don't have at home can be mobilized to help where they are needed. And the third one is how do you keep your talent, the one you've grown internally, and prevent them from going to other countries where they might see more economic and development opportunities. And the three are critically important. I think media has many of the advantages needed to do well on those talking about younger generation. They are the things. So involving them in designing digital transformation, listening to what their expectations are, is critically important to success. The second one, and again I'm referring to the example of the industrialized countries, we have failed in those countries to attract significant numbers of girls to technical and engineering education. There is huge potential there, in which emerging countries are often doing better than the more advanced countries. So I think these are two of the hurdles that could be addressed and would make a big difference in how the media manages its own digital solution, especially from the point of view of that.
Dr. Lanvin, let me thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the scenery. Alright, so let's exhaust the issue of talent. Dr. Naomab was in industry that is frustrating matters. Am I paraphrasing you correctly, Dr. Naomab?
Yeah. What I'm saying is that if you look at the movement from the third industrial revolution towards the fourth industrial revolution, the whole aspect of the fourth industrial revolution, it is conceptualization starts in the higher education sector, and then it moves into the industry. So if you look at what the higher education sector has done in terms of building capacity, in terms of setting up the curricula that will respond, the question is, where is the uptake? And if the uptake is not there, what needs to be done in the market segment is to create sufficient demand so that the throughput from the universities can match that. So that's what I'm saying, particularly with respect to the transition part of things. The industry needs to be mobilized, but that requires the industry to invest in R&D so that they can generate the necessary uptake, whether it's services, products, or so forth that they need, and through that they can then have the required skills.
Excellent. I think, Dr. Erastus, you already mentioned some of the projects that you are collaborating with the universities and that were launched together. Professor Bwalya, on the question of talent, you have this youth that Dr. Lanvin is talking about, your girls, you have this digital natives. Do you think that it's a fertile ground for competent talent going forward?
Yes, where I'm sitting, I'm telling myself that the future is very bright because the kids know about they're born in the technological era and they are already inside the digital innovation and digital ecosystems. So I think what we need to do is to keep training them. And not only training them, other education institutions. I usually, when I'm given a space, I usually say that I'm not a fountain of knowledge. I want to learn. I want cross-pollination of knowledge. If I'm seated here, I want to learn from you. I want to learn from my students. So I want to learn from the industry. When I have my PhD students, they don't just do a topic. Before I accept them, I emphasize that they should find a company and work on something that the company is growing and create that space before I accept it myself. So that engage with industry, we learn something from industry, they learn something from us. And yeah, basically, so we're very fortunate that the future is bright with digital ecosystem. What we just need to do is to ensure that our policy frameworks and our preparation for the digital revolution is in place before we get into the actual projects.
Excellent. So how do you bring the rest of us on board? The rest of us who are already in those offices, you're automating, obviously you are digitizing, the culture needs to change in those institutions and so on. How do you bring the rest of us on that journey so that once you introduce that technology, it's being embraced, it's being adopted, and that we are no longer laggards? Anybody on the panel can take that question.
I was educated in South Korea, and I'm happy that the speaker was doing the link talked about South Korea. It is a long journey in order to go to full digital transformation. I usually tell colleagues that those who are in the industry is not too late. Let's progressively introduce them to the different innovations and the different systems that are coming out. The mistake that we can make is outwardly bring technologies and innovations. People are going to be comfortable, and once they get into that state, they resist the technology. Anyway, so progressively produce, progressively retrain them, re-engage them so that they can be introduced gradually into the technology space. Thank you.
I have already, I believe, touched on that question earlier on when I did the intervention on PPPs, because I wanted to need less people there. We can upskill you as an institution, you upskill and you reskill, so that those that are going to be redundant in some of the positions can then be taken up in other positions. And I think even the time maybe might be opportunity that I also want to bring along. I don't have to want us just to talk on digital transformation in isolation, but bringing it back to sustainable economic development. And that is what we want to see. We have got a contraction of GDP last year of 8.5%. We say that the economy is going to recover by around 1.4% this year. That will be mostly based effect in a few of the sectors that will improve. But one of the key sectors that actually supported the growth in both years with the ICT sector that came up surprisingly, and not really surprisingly in terms of COVID-19, that it has great potential. And for us to grow the economy, we have to look at agriculture. How do we digitize it? If we are saying that it's one of your largest employers, how do we digitize agriculture? How are we going to, already the mining sector has shown in terms of grid vessels that they have worked, what can be done in terms of extracting offshore diamonds? And that is one of the things, in terms of your private sector innovation that is brought on board that will help support growth further. But then on the third sector, what can we do to support economic growth? And that is where we need to bring again regulators and innovators on board together. The type of services that we are giving in the financial sector, what can we do? The one aspect that I also want to further touch on is in terms of with data sharing, as Prof indicated last night, comes the issue of the fear of security that one should have the similar data platforms. How can you protect your information? And how can you protect yourself against cyber security and cyber attacks? And those are things that we need to, I believe, that what we pass will support and help the market players in that field. So it's important that in terms of when you talk of skills development and digital transformation, we bring it to sustainable economic development. Finally, on the issue of the skills mismatches that we have, it is important that we do comprehensive skills assessments, even on a biannual, twice a year, every other year, to be able to see and assess what are the type of skills. Because I think I worry, this digital transformation is a fast-moving train that we were forced to do with COVID-19. Even the businesses that thought that business would be going on as usual. 3 years ago, we never foresaw COVID-19. We are foreseeing a fourth wave coming. How prepared are we, and how prepared are we getting our kids at the basic level? Some of the schools internationally, some private schools, started robotics at school. How do we get some of our other rural kids on board to get to how to operate from a small age, how to get the innovation that instilled in those children? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for that information, Ms. Sarah. Let's now open it to questions from the floor. We have 2 mics in the hallway there. I think you just raise your hand and then we'll...
Important thing that people do not realize in digital facing the fourth industrial revolution is that it's not only the ICT sector to benefit, and there might not practically be total job losses, because I, as an IT expert, I will be able to set up the environment for these applications to work. Say, in the car assembly, I will have robots to do the heavy duties of assembling these engines and putting them together. But then think of who is going to sit behind the codes of knowing what part goes where. It's actually the mechanic from the VTC that will need to be upskilled or reskilled with a little bit of coding skills to be able to control or program these robots that are going to do the mechanical work. He's not going to have greases and lifting these engines, but then he is going to sit behind the computer to program the robots that are going to do that.
All right. Mr. Isa?
Question. And the idea is this question of inequality. So, attending a meeting like this, I'm really trying to put the question how best we handle this. My thinking here, last week I attended a conference, so to say, it has to do with the presentation that was based on the saving and investment around institution of, one can say, in the investment domain. The presenter, there is a booming growth in that sector. But then when you flip the coin, this is also what is happening within our economy. When you analyze our economy, it's doing so well. But when you transcend from the economic explanation and then go back to the ground, you will see the disconnect. So what I'm saying to you here, this is the same approach that transformation, if you are not deliberate in transformation, whether it's digital transformation, there is an embedded approach of capitalism that's always reinventing itself. So even this platform as they are, we have to find a way, and that's what I'm trying to have from our panelists to engage the question: how do we realize and embrace technology and still be able to transform all these products to help society move forward? And I do want Dr. Erold from us. What I pick up from the statement of the Deputy Minister from International Relations, and this is also a very popular notion in the government rhetoric, this economy, diplomatic economy. Yeah, I think it's economic diplomacy. What does it mean? I want you to unpack that statement in the context of transformation. Because, yeah, I think.
All right. No, I think
just one more last week.
yes, please. If you can pose the question and maybe condense the statements. Thank you.
I'm a filmmaker. When you see me having my camera and I'm capturing content, what I do with this content, some of this material, I put it on YouTube. So, the idea is this: YouTube or Google. When you generate, you need to have your aim, basically. Your aim, what you are making from all this content. Google requires you, especially if you have viewers who are watching your content in the States or in America, you have to pay 24% because Namibia did not have a tax treaty with US. And I think if we have to make progress, we have to make these things easier for us. Imagine this is what you have been taxed because your country does not really comply with those things. So it's just an example, but I think Coalition Central and the Minister of Finance, it's something to work on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those interventions.
Just congratulate them.
informative symposium. Sitting here, I've seen or learned today that the issues are not that different from South Africa, from the issues in Namibia. And when I talk about one issue, for instance, talent, we have a problem in Botswana, not only of youth unemployment, but also graduates unemployment. Well, graduates are sponsored by the government, go through 4 years, they come out with seafood. And in fact, the study which was done by one of the professors, I think now he's in Vietnam, he was in Botswana, Professor Sharon, showed that some of them didn't forget the skills they learned. So by the time they get employment, they forgot what they learned. My question then is, who can advocate for graduates? When I was in school in Scotland, I learned that the graduates, any graduates coming from school is teaching. And the employers knew that that person next time will go in 12 months of management training or training of some sort. And some of those companies, Max and Spencer, were digital companies. They had their own systems, you know, within their own shops or businesses, not to their movement. So they teach any graduate to come through. It seems to me that we, as African countries, maybe to also solve the issue of youth unemployment and graduate unemployment, we could look at that, particularly professors, see how we can advocate for graduates to continue learning on the job. Because really to reject someone who is a graduate and saying they don't know anything, you can't employ them. I think it's in the end, it's a waste of government resources. We should agree that training continues on the job. Training. So someone coming out, whether you've done history or geography or what, maybe at Max and Spencer, as long as you are a graduate, they didn't care which course you did. So it seems to me that maybe we can find that connection.
All right, thanks.
And we can solve the problem.
Thank you so much. Who's going to advocate for the graduates? Appreciates intentions. But if you can go ahead with your intervention, and then we'll take the last gentleman here, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Emilia Nghikembua. My question is, I think it was going to be very good. It is given that the fourth industrial revolution technology will bring about new kinds of conflicts before the courts. But how or what are we doing to ensure that technology itself help administer the law? Because what platform or how far have you gone to make sure that you have included the legal fraternity to make sure that they have also, prepared themselves for this kind of conflict?
Thank you so much for that intervention, gentlemen.
Very good to you all, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols of my name is Erold, and I'm an educator in higher education. What we normally do is, and this is focusing on work integrated learning, what we normally do is after we've actually trained our students, we send them for a 5 to 6 months program on work integrated learning to various institutions. We send them to industry. Now what we actually want is, we're focusing on a balanced scorecard approach. So what we do, we train them to actually excel in guest satisfaction, finances, being a talent wherever they go, in that particular industry and so on. Simply because you need like talent in your industry. You need them into your businesses and so on and so forth. What do we get? When we send these trainees to your companies and to your establishments, what you do is you put them into the store and give them a bunch of filing that needs to be done. That's number one. Number two, other trainees actually came back to us and said to us that instead of keeping us 1 month at a certain department, 1 month at this department, and obviously rotating to the next, some of our trainees actually came back to us and said to us, we've been for the last 4 months at one department, simply because we've had a challenge where some of the employees was let go, some of the employees were sent home, and we're keeping our trainees for 4 months at one particular department. So the question is, what can we do? What we want is, like I said, for the balance scorecard approach, let them actually focus on talent, operations, finances, and so on and so forth. Why do you want to keep them there? We also want them to go through this digital transformation process and focus on all areas in your organization and so on and so forth. What can we do and what do you want us to do? We've had a situation where our students resign from your companies, saying they don't want to work anymore because they're not trained, they're not taken through, and so on. So I would like to request you to focus on that. Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you so much. The last gentleman, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. My name is Jacob. I'm the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Commerce, Management and Law at UNAM. The question I have is to the regulators, especially the CEO of trade. Yes, we agree, we understand the fact that it's important to discourage the sharing or the resistance to share equipment or infrastructure by different competitors. The question that I have is, what incentives do you have that you are offering to those who are competitors currently, instead of just thinking about preventing them from coming up with this kind of anti-sharing strategies? What incentives do you have for them to ensure that they can set up infrastructure in areas where there's no infrastructure, than simply the restrictive arrangement that prevails? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Nyame. I think let's wrap up by way of responding to some of those comments that are in your area, but also some of them that are popping up on our slide array. But also just your final thoughts on those 3 pillars. We've talked about technology, we've talked about talent, we've talked about innovation, because those are the 3 pillars that basically decide decisive factors for us to be technologically ready and therefore able to embrace digital transformation as a country. So maybe if you can just solidify your thoughts around those and the questions that have come up. Maybe start with you, Dr. Erastus.
Thank you. Maybe I'll start off by answering the question as to who should take the lead in terms of nurturing the talent. MTC has a program that we call MTC National Internship, whereby we are funding for 160 students for them to be able to do their internship. And there has always been a call to other corporates so that we can cooperate and make the program bigger. Our position is that the more corporates we can come on board, and if they can commit to a certain number, then the number can grow. If you look at the network, I think we have around 3,000 students that need to do internship for them to graduate. We've been running this program for the past 2 years, and then the difference is we pay for their internship, and then they get absorbed by the market and any company where they are needed. So we have agreements with the universities, we have agreements with institutions like BTC, whereby they then engage our HR office and then submit the needs from the market. And I will also encourage that we need to move away from half or most of the corporate.
Implementation modalities that need to be finalized before the act can then be commenced and fully implemented. There's also one on the SIM registration be accessible to the banks for purposes of KYC. Those are all modalities that we'll be working on once the SIM registration process has commenced, and then we can have discussions. And once again, this is where the element of collaborative regulation needs to come in. We need to speak to each other because there's a lot of overlaps and interfaces in the work that we are doing.
These signatures, I think that's started there, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. Dr. Naomab, over to you.
Yes, thank you once again, Mr. Moderator. There was an issue raised, particularly to me with respect to economic diplomacy. But I want to say that perhaps I do not have the article, response to that, but I would use the term of scientific diplomacy to respond to it. Is the question of the rising unemployment and particularly changes in social dynamics that can, result in conflicts. Is it real or perceived? If we are to go through a digital transformation, I think there are some of the questions. Taking into account that we have a youthful population and we have a higher unemployment rate. The answer to that question is that in his side, and learning from all the other previous industrial revolutions, each of those industrial revolutions had advantages and disadvantages. And with respect to this particular industrial revolution, the perception that there would be an increase in unemployment is founded, it's possible that it can be, particularly because there is a possibility that we can lose low skills jobs and therefore increases unemployment. How do you address that aspect? The way you can address that is by looking at the economic aspect, and that means we should very quickly move away from net consumers of technology to becoming drivers of technology. What does that mean? It means in principle that we have to begin to harness our talent locally in a way that we begin to become business-oriented in the way we utilize the technology. So we must develop our applications. We must drive our digital transformation agendas in the public sector, in the private sector. That way we create opportunities through the technology. But if we import technology, the realization that perhaps there will be losses in jobs is real. But as I said, there is an opportunity to balance that out. The other aspect that I wanted to just say in conclusion is that the regulatory environment plays a key role because we have to look at investors and their concerns. If we are to increase the appetite for investors to come into the country as it pertains to the technological transformation, we need to increase the appetite and reduce the risk that is associated with that. And to create that environment, for example, of course, the regulatory framework is necessary, but the necessary ecosystem is of importance, that is the integration between higher education, public sector, civil society, and the private sector. And that is what the university, the Liberian University of Science and Technology, has embarked on. Its principle, that's the notion of the HTTPS, is to create that enabling environment for those entities to at least find an entry point into our market.
Thank you so much, Dr. Naomab. Mr. Philip?
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe I'll start speaking to the question on the economic consumption state. This state, in specific, was enacted in 2019, and its level was for 2019. And the part that is not operationalized, to be specific, in section 20, in chapter 4 and 5. These parts of the act are not operationalized, pending the establishment of an advisory council that must advise the minister as he makes regulations for control of on, the establishment of this ASMAC, which is the Council of the Licensing Minister, and then definitely all around the operationalization of this act will be implemented. So I think this far the efforts have gone out to the industry for applicants to submit their applications, and sure soon we will do a shortlisting and appoint this body that is actually supposed to assist the minister in making these regulations. The other one that I would want to speak to is I think on the digital transformation that goes in tandem with the institutional mechanism to get environmental effects. So with specific reference to e-waste, the Ministry of ICT has already started addressing that specific matter. That's by developing the electronic e-waste management policy. And this policy is now at very advanced levels. We have a consultant that's doing the final touches on this policy, and surely consultations will be taking places, public consultations, before probably submitting the cabinet for approval.
Thank you so much. It's Nakusera, please.
The burning question that has been coming up numerous times on context and critical currency has been a question that we have been inundated with. And I've been earlier saying that we have got what we call the fintech regulatory framework, according to which we have different tools that we are going to approach, looking at the type of innovations that would come, because for us as a central bank, we have the responsibility that those that we are regulating that have got public funds are able to then indicate to the bank that my funds have been taken out of bank A, bank B, and I'm giving you this for plain, please investigate. But when it comes to entities we are not regulating, then that becomes a different ballgame. And hence we are saying that we have started with a regulatory framework in which part of that is to bring the regulatory sandbox. We have got the testing, we have got the learning in terms of innovation that are coming, because we want to bring the innovators and the regulators coming with products, those that we are not supervising, if they are products that are touching on the entities that we are supervising, impact on the banking system, impact on those that are from the non-bank world, which we have macro-prudential oversight, that will then have an impact on the financial system, then we are looking into that. So that's a process, it's a journey, and therefore it becomes a difficult question, because every time that Israel indicates that it is illegal, then he gets the punch for it. But that's how far I would go on that issue. The other one is with regards to the skills that have also been asked by Mali on the unemployment, I believe, when I was presenting as well. And if you look at what we teach in Economics 101 on structural unemployment, it becomes important that we need to reskill and upskill those that get unemployed because of job A, but those same people, if people are getting laid off at the mines because of capital investments that were made, because of automation, how can they then be utilized from that mining sector into another field? That is very critical. On the issue of the youth that are graduates, we have also at the Bank of Namibia have bursary schemes where we then provide bursaries to a limited number of young students that are in the field of the financial sector, but they're contributing to some of it are lawyers, IT specialists, economists, accountants, and so on. So it's different fields that are then taken up, sometimes at the bank, sometimes at other financial institutions, sometimes in the media. We even went to the extent of actually giving bursaries, limited bursaries to education that are in science and technology. So, and method they teach actually. So those are some of the things we are doing. We also do postgraduate classes. We also have got what we call the GAP program, graduate accelerated program, that we take graduates on an 18-month program to prepare them after they have graduated for the workforce. So we take them on a contract of 18 months, the first 6 months in one department, the next 6 months in another department, the next 6 months in another department. So it works with the world that the doctor was speaking to in terms of the work integrated learning that the universities are embarking on. Also in terms of the internships, we try and take up as much as we can because we know some of the universities, they are requiring that students go for 3-4 months into that world program before they can graduate. So we are asking, similarly to what Dr. Erastus had asked, that we as private sector, public sector also support this course because at times at different platforms we've been indicating that the students are not ready for the job. And this is the world is some of the things that the institution actually brought into place to try and help with this in terms of upskilling and giving that practical work experience to the students. Thank you.
Professor?
Okay, I'm mostly done, but I just want to say one or two things. Looking at Namibia, the journey to digital transformation is long, very long. And because it's a multifaceted undertaking, you need to be inclusive as much as possible. If the takeoff is bad, you spend 20 years to spend billions and billions of dollars. But by the end of the day, you won't get the benefits of digital transformation. So you are at a stage where you're laying the foundation. This is a very critical stage. When you build a house, you have to pay attention to the foundation, otherwise you can't stand. I would encourage a lot of discussions among different stakeholders so that then you can share, you can look at the context of Namibia. If I look at the questions that are popping up, I'm telling myself to say, there are so many things that are not done yet that need to be engaged with, given the context of Namibia and the movement of the presentation. I kept saying the context, you need to look at the context. What motivates you to start the digital transformation then as a nation, as different stakeholders in the Namibian economy? Ask yourself those questions. Is it just saying we want to be South Africa like South Africa? South Africa had a presidential forum commission. So because South Africa had that, we also need to have it. Okay, you have it. It does its job while it gives you a report, so what was it? And we've done this. If you go deep in Kakura, does somebody deep in Kakura know about what you're trying to do as a nation, or what journey you're taking as a nation? Address the basics, but you cannot also sit back and say, because we do not address the basics, so make the focus on the information faster. You need to start. This is the time to start, but you need to up your game. You should not wait for this proposal once a year, because we cannot talk. It becomes like a talk show. We talk, and then you leave, and you forget about it. I also want to touch on the question of, and this borders to the question of digital inclusion and digital exclusion. If you do not design this digital transformation journey very well, I can assure you that many of a large segment of the population will be left behind. And it will be very difficult for you to motivate them to jump on the bandwagon. So sit down with yourself as a nation, see what steps you're going to take towards this journey, be very genuine to yourself, appraise yourself, what we have, what don't we have, understand very well what are the benefits of this journey. And once you do that, the key participants in this journey, like the government, community, just saying that the political will is not enough. We want to see our project is going to be dedicated to digital transformation. You know what that can do. It can transform me to kind of good progress so that everybody understands what you do. So I'll end there. Just say thank you for the opportunity and I wish you luck in this journey. We are available to also lead engagements on these different aspects. Please let's keep engaging and let's see where this